titled The Philippines and Its Immigration Regimes, and I call the Philippines an unlikely, quote, and unquote, home for Korean diasporic communities, and I also kind of problematize the idea of diasporic, which is a little departure from Dr. Lee's keynote speech this morning. For today, I want to discuss my research focus and the background. Also, I will discuss the idea, the notion of Korean wave in the Philippines. And this Korean wave in the Philippines, I posit or claim it as more, not exactly a wave, but an illustration of north-south migration. And this north-south migration, I call this, borrowing from migration scholar Matthew Hayes, the idea of geo-arbitrage strategy in relation to north-south migration. Still not there. Oh, there we go. So these were the things that I was explaining a little while back. And as a receiving society, all receiving societies consist of what we call immigration regimes. And I will explain later what these immigration regimes are, and I will end my presentation with some parting thoughts and recommendations. Right. So this whole idea of the Philippines as a receiving society is a huge departure. Not huge, but it is a departure from the popular notion that the Philippines is the global model of ascending country. According to Dr. Lee's keynote speech, 9 million Filipinos are said to be in more than 200 countries spread all over, and then we celebrate that. Like, they're so cosmopolitan, we're everywhere, so we're the model of a global ascending country. However, we overlook the fact that the Philippines is also a home, from the work of Dr. Aziz here, that it is also a home to many types of people and foreigners with different migration trajectories. For example, permanent settlement, refugees, international students, transits, vacationers, and what my beloved Maki study as transnational communities. However, where I'm coming in is that there are no systematic studies of the Philippines as a receiving society. We have been over-studied as an ascending society, but not a systematic study to look the Philippines as ascending society and the migration dynamics that it entail if a country is called, or a society is called a receiving society. Right? The studies existing right now are empirical profiling of foreigners living in the Philippines and historical sketching of older migration groups. No, these are good because they lay the land for the study of the Philippines as a receiving society, but then from my perspective, we need to have a systematic study of the Philippines in this manner. We are very lucky that UP CIFAL, it's in French and I cannot pronounce it, so let's call it CIFAL, CIFAL, that they came up with a study, and you have the snapshot of it. This is one of the more comprehensive look at the Korean diaspora in the Philippines right now. And they provided for us some of these migration, and then they provided it in a chronological manner. For my analysis, and how did I make sense of these typologies and drivers of migration, we call it that way. From my study, from my perspective, the historical facts that provided to us by the previous speaker, Dr. Abejo, Professor Abejo, yeah, it's just a title, right? So, I call those mobility of, for example, St. Andrew Kim Daegon as episodic migration, or episodic moments, or moments of migration from 16th century, 18th century, and those that he provided for us. But since the establishment of the two countries in a Westphalian order, which we call the country-to-country, state-to-state diplomatic relations, we started to have what we call the systematic migration that have patterns and what journalists would call waves of migration, right? I have reservation in calling migration in waves, because when you say waves, they come in, like they swarm in. So some people think of it that way, but there are, actually there are only 100,000 of Korean residents in the Philippines, so I do not think that it's waves, unless we discuss it from the statistical figures of tourists, right? So what I did here, when we talk about the systematic patterns of Korean migration to the Philippines, we have the Korean wave, which is more a notion. It may not be a real wave in the realistic sense. And there are the circular migration, the long-term migration, and the short-term migration, right? So let's start first with a perceived Korean wave happening in the Philippines. I got this online, and they would say, they're everywhere, they came without warning, they're like, they just came in. Of course, they don't just come in. There are patterns and trends and regimes and laws and travel visas and passports that they need to come in, right? And then they said, people would say they trickle in an almost unnoticed manner, right? Another one is this one. You see them almost anywhere, everywhere, right? Korean spaces, people, they talk loud in public spaces. So these are popular discourses that we have, or the perception of the Korean wave in the Philippines. Let's juxtapose this perception with statistics. So I got this from, actually it's Marilao, I apologize for the mistake. It's Marilao 2007. They traced the number of Koreans in terms of visitor arrivals. So we don't have a very straightforward, clear statistical figures. I have to get it from everywhere and then put them together, because so far, you may correct me, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I did not see it. There are no databases for us to look for statistics, right? So I got what the author used is the Department of Tourism number of tourist arrivals in the Philippines, and you see the increase from 1992 to 2003. However, in terms of those living here in a more permanent basis, there are only like an insignificant number. We continue this, my source is the Department of Tourism, again, tourist arrivals. So when you say tourist arrivals, they come in without visa, and at the airport, most of them will get a 30-day stay in the Philippines. So it can be anything. It can be tourist, it can be study. So, but the short-term temporary visa is always for 30 days for the South Koreans, right? And it has increased a lot. And in 2012, the number reached 1 million mark. And it steadily continues until 2019, and the number of South Korean tourists in the Philippines comprised 24 to 25% of the total. So in 2018, in the half mark of the tourist arrivals, the Chinese tourists, again, we are calling them the invasion of the Chinese in the Philippines, right? The waves of Chinese tourists. Now there are about 700,000 of them, but still the Koreans are on the top rank of the source for tourists. Now this is also from UPCL, and there is now a slight decrease of the number of tourist arrivals among Koreans, right? And I will discuss why. Right, so, and then I tease out, what about these numbers? What about these statistics? I tease out what we call the migration trajectories. And in the migration studies, trajectories means the pathways, or what kind of migrants are they? So there are student migrants, especially it reached the peak, the student migration reached the peak at the early 2000s. That's why people say there was a wave of Koreans coming to the Philippines. And now, according to UPCL, it's increasing and leading, the migration trajectory is now leading to a more permanent, long-term type of migration. Right. But from my understanding and analysis of what's going on here, there is more like an overlapping of migration trajectories. And these overlapping migration trajectories are often pushed or intertwined with migration motivations. So why did Koreans come here in the Philippines in the first place, right? I analyzed it using the idea of Korean imaginary in two ways, the touristic and the aspirational imaginary. The touristic is their idea that the Philippines is a tropical paradise with white pristine beaches, and the people are so happy that we laugh and smile all the time, right? This is an imaginary. It doesn't mean a figment of imagination, right? It is an imaginary, co-produced and co-created by various actors such as the media, state agencies, and by the migrants themselves, right? And there are also those aspirational imaginary. The Philippines is a developing country, and their imaginary is that they will live a better and more comfortable life here because their money would be in a bigger value, right? I call this, borrowing from Hayes and Perez-Daniel's work recently, I think it's not 2017, it's 2019 actually. Their idea of geo-arbitrage. Geo here means geopolitical. So if you move to a less developed country, your money has more value. Your educational achievement has more value than if you stay in your own country. So Korea, and everyone here is a Koreanist. I have a reservation calling myself a Koreanist. In Korea right now, the culture and the compressed modernity, as they call it, produced a social cost. Some people cannot keep up with a pali-pali culture of everything has a sense of expeditiousness, everything is expedited, everything is in a hurry, right? Some couldn't keep up. Some refused to keep up and chase this pali-pali culture and pali-pali dreams. So some would like to move to another country where maybe it's more laid back, maybe it's less stressful, right? And also the cosmopolitan yearning. The moment South Korea reached its compressed modernity and rapid industrialization, it is now playing the ranking game of which country is the more cosmopolitan, which country is better, for example. So Korea is playing that game, and it produced Koreans with cosmopolitan yearning, I call it cosmopolitan yearning, going to different places, both traditional and non-traditional receiving societies. The traditional ones are Canada, Australia, the United States, UK, and the non-traditional ones are the more exotic types, the Philippines, Indonesia, Bali, Phnom Penh, and Cambodia, and whatnot. Right? And the other motivation for that is I want to achieve a better life at a lower cost. And I call this the geo-arbitrage. That you have more, how much time, right? And also, since they have this migration motivation, they come here and eventually they like it maybe, or perhaps they want to try and see what they can do here. Most of the short-term stayers eventually come here on a long-term basis, or some have become repeated travelers, or what we call in a more circular migration. There is an ease of shifting from one migration trajectory to another, or one migrant category to another, and I attribute this to the existing migrant networks that are existing here. They may be very small in number of Korean migrants, but they have very strong migrant networks. These migrant networks are unlike the Filipino migrant networks based on regionalism, based on ethnic group. For them, it's more on pragmatism and strategy, which we can encompass in what Shangyao, linguist, and you would call the migration infrastructures. So these migration infrastructures, I have it here. Yes, the migration infrastructures are everything and anything, institutions, agencies, state and non-state agencies that facilitate, maintain, and impede the mobility of people in every migration phase, pre-departure, and we are very familiar with this, right? They can be Korean civic organizations who facilitate the adjustment and integration into the receiving society, or at the same time, they may also impede the integration because they create enclaving. They create what I call parallel lives in the Philippines. I don't say that they're enclaving because they're visible to our eyes. They're living parallel lives. They have their own lives, we have our own lives. We are just occupying the same space. Right? Another form of infrastructures would be the brokers. These are the English schools. These are the travel agencies who facilitate that produce and co-produce the imaginary, and at the same time facilitate their mobility to the Philippines. And also the state agencies, right? So if they lobby for ease in mobility to the Philippines, because the Korean government lobbied the Philippine government, then they also are part of these migration infrastructures, or these assemblages of apparatuses that control, impede, facilitate mobility. Right? Now, this Korean migration to the Philippines is considered to be puzzling, but for migration scholars, it's not really like puzzling in that manner, because it is illustrative of North-South migration that I already mentioned, which is part of the changing global political economy. Not everyone could be rich. This is the reality. So they look for places where they can maximize. So I know it sounds very economically deterministic, but this is part of the data that I generated, right? So there is a transnational relocation where they can maximize their or maybe they're looking for a better life, and they think that here they will have better life. Especially for the retirees. These retirees are not really old. They want to have a new life where they are free from social norms and cultural norms. Here, a more free life, or a better life where they can have drivers, where they can have kasambahay or domestic workers, and which can never happen in Korea unless you're super rich or you're a Checo owner or whatnot. Right? They also think that the Philippines has good panoramic nature. It may provide English education for their children, and this is very important, that they can gain new identities here as someone having money and regaining another new life. For example, remarriage, or having a Filipino girlfriend as part of their imaginary of what the Philippines is. Right? They say that the close proximity to the Philippines matter, also the cheaper transportation matter, but for me it's more of a maximization of their stay in the Philippines, and I also connect it to the choices of where they live within the Philippines. So most of the cities that they concentrate themselves in are those closer to international airports. So I interpret this as the urban imaginary of the core and peripheral cities in the Philippines. So which ones are good cities, but they can have everything that I have mentioned here, because this is part of the maximization of their mobility to the Philippines. Right? And then, so there is now a connection between the imaginary, the motivation, then the kind of migrants they are. It also is shaped, they are also shaped and shape the immigration regimes. Immigration regimes are basically policies, migration policies, and outcomes. It's not just a policy, but what is important is also the outcomes and the disparate interest. People have different interests in the migration regimes, right? I only have 2 minutes. I focus on travel visa, and the travel visa would identify what kind of migrants they are. Based on my understanding of immigration regimes in the Philippines, we are very relaxed. And I call this a very pragmatic type of migration regimes, which underlying it is the logic of economics. The Philippine government is earning a lot with the type of travel visa regimes that they provided for the Koreans. For example, the serial renewal of visas. If they renew their visas every month, they pay 2,500 pesos every month. Some of them renew their visas as many as 12 times, which means once a month they renew their visa. Right? Then they would leave the country, go back to the Philippines for 2 to 3 weeks, come back again, and they renew their visa over and over again without getting the more difficult type of visa, which is the Section 13 visa, which require a lot of money for them, $35,000 to $50 to become an entrepreneur or retire here, or what we call the permanent resident. 13A visa has been extended to Korea. So, the 13A visa, by the way, is based on jus sanguinis, or the blood, or the descendants. You can only be a Filipino if you have a Filipino blood. But this has been recently extended to few foreigners in the Philippines if they can provide their desirability, which means they have money. Right? I call this the desirability, the concept of desirability among foreigners. Right? So for me, the travel visa regimes in the Philippines are actually profit-generating apparatus, not really to recognize people, differentiate people. Like, for example, in the United States, in the UK, the traditional destination societies. For us, it's more economic, it's more pragmatic, it's more instrumental. However, the Koreans have a way of evading and navigating the bureaucratic hurdles. The bureaucratic hurdles are actually about the length of time of waiting for their visas. How do they evade it? They don't present themselves personally in the Bureau of Immigration. They go to travel agencies. They pay 500 pesos and everything is done for them, especially for the renewal of visas on a monthly basis, right? The implications of my study. So what am I going to do with my study, right? I want to look at the Korean mobility to the Philippines as a site or a locus of re-examining North-South migration. North-South migration is often treated as the white privilege. They go to overseas countries, the Germans, the Americans, the British, basking in the tropical sun, and they have their slaves, the brown Filipinos, treating them. That is the concept of North-South migration, but we haven't really thought about it in a different way. And so Korean migration to the Philippines may be an alternative way of examining it. And the Korean migration to the Philippines, what I like really about it is the complexity, because the Koreans have multiple trajectories. It's not a very one straightforward, I am a tourist. After a while, they become short-term stayers. After becoming short stayers, they become permanent settlers here. So the multiple trajectories is very interesting for me as a migration scholar. Also, there must be a systematic understanding of the Philippines as a receiving society, going beyond that we are just, source of the global servants, as Koreans would call us, right? So the burning questions here, are they here to stay? For me, yes, they are, because of the embeddedness in the Philippine society, of the migrant networks, the infrastructures, despite the fear of the Chinese invasion, quote and unquote. The recommendations, I don't feel very confident about this because I'm not an expert in recommending. I only analyze things. So maybe for UP, this platform is very good because we don't have a systematic study and a place where we can have the platform or a database where we can get data about Koreans in the Philippines. I end my presentation with that. Thank you very much for your attention.